Hey there, y'all. Welcome to me drawing a picture. So this picture is one I took when my family went up into the mountains. It's my younger sister's hands. Put some flowers into her hands and told her to hold her hands the way they are up there in the corner on my phone screen. And I took a picture, and I didn't do it with the intention of ever drawing it, but I sat down with the intention of drawing and was looking through my phone for a picture to draw, because I take pictures, and when I draw pictures, especially for making a video, I like to draw something that I took a picture of myself, so then there's no copyright or anything like that. And came across this picture, and I really enjoy drawing hands. I've heard a lot of times that like hands and portraits are some of the hardest things to draw, and I really enjoy drawing those two things particularly. I seem to be pretty good at them, and that's just because I don't know, I've been drawing my whole life. I've never taken any classes or anything, but I've just always drawn with pencil and paper. Like, I used to just draw with my school pencil on a notebook. Like, all my notebooks are just full of mostly horses. I always drew horses. But shading, as I just started here in the video, shading is one of my favorite things to do with pencil. Like, drawing out the line work is always kind of frustrating for me. I tend to, a lot of times, start shading before the line work is good. And so, like, I'll work for hours on a piece, think it's looking great, and then pull my head back away from it and something's proportionally way off or something. Because I love shading so much, I'm always really eager to get into the shading phase, but over the years I've been trying to get better about making sure the whole picture, the line work looks good before I get into the shading. And I did a better job with this picture than I've done in the past. But another thing I've struggled with over the years is being way too either heavy-handed or light-handed, either too afraid to put down the proper shades or trying to make it dark by just pressing really hard with the pencil tip, which I've learned that is not the way to go. Instead, you want to, like, the way I do it now is I start out with a harder pencil, and a harder pencil like a 2B or an H or a 2H. I usually don't use the H's. I start with a 2B and then I work further into the softer leads, like 5B and 6B are softer. H stands for hard. I can't remember what B stands for, but B means soft. So if it's like a 4B, that's really soft, which will make really dark graphite on the paper. And like a 2H is a pretty hard pencil. Like, if you're trying to write with it normally, it'd be really light and really thin. So I try to start out with about a 2B, which I sketched this one out in, and when I start the shading, I start out with a 2B and just try and shape and outline the areas that are going to be shaded, and kind of like the ones that are supposed to be real dark, I'll make those darker in the beginning, and then, you know, make the lighter ones lighter, so that later when I go back in with the next step up of a softer lead to really start getting it darker, I don't get so confused. Like, it's easier for me to tell where the really dark parts should be. So like on the hand that I've already shaded right behind the thumb, it's pretty dark back there. So I tried to start out with it a little darker, so when I go back in later with a 4B or a 6B, I know that part's supposed to be really dark. And so earlier I was talking about how I really enjoy drawing portraits and hands, and I hear a lot of people saying that those are really difficult things to draw. This picture here, I've made it many times larger than my reference picture, and I usually do that. I once drew a portrait that's about this size from a passport photo, which is like maybe an inch by an inch large, and it turned out really well. I like blowing things up because if you draw your picture a lot bigger than the reference picture, it's a lot easier to get all the details in there. And I think just my interest throughout my life in my drawings has always been realism. That's always been my goal. And I've never really achieved it, but I finally come to the point now where I realize that, like, I used to think the place I wanted to be, my goal was to be able to draw a picture and have it look really real. But now I know that while that's good practice and it's good to be able to draw realistically, it's more important to find your own style. So I think all those years of striving for realism really helped me get to this point where I could draw a pair of hands that look pretty good, but the finished result, you're not going to look at it and then the photo and be like, oh, this looks like the photo, which is fine with me. I'm really happy with this drawing. When we get to the end of the video, you'll see. It's got flaws, which used to drive me insane. Like, I'd get halfway through a picture and something wasn't going right and I would just give up. I have so many pictures laying around that are halfway finished, but hands I really enjoy drawing because of the angles and the curves and the creases and, like, fingers. I really enjoy drawing fingers and, like, those lines in the palms. And like I said, I really enjoy shading, and hands are really fun to shade because if you notice, after a certain point, I kind of stopped looking at my reference picture on my phone because I already have most of the line work done, and from that point you can just kind of work with the lines you already have and just try and kind of follow them and flow with them. And you want to try and keep everything in the fingers pretty round, and you know, like, it takes some practice to learn where your light should be in your picture and then make the shadows in the correct places, you know, for the angle that the light is shining. And in this picture, the light is shining almost straight from the top, but it's to the side a little bit. And so that's why behind the first hand that I shaded, behind the thumb there, is a lot darker, and then the thumb on the other hand is very light on the outside. So there's a slight angle to the light source. And another thing, I don't know if it's gonna bother anybody, but the dandelion that I drew in the picture looks quite a bit different from the dandelion in the reference picture. And the other flower is purple in the reference picture, and I end up going with blue for it. One, because blue is my favorite color, and two, because I didn't think I had the right kind of purple. But halfway through coloring this flower, my daughter comes up to me and she was like, hey, why didn't you make it purple? And I told her, I was like, I don't have the right shade, my purple's too dark. And I had totally forgotten that I had recently bought a very light, like, lavender shade of a Copic marker. And she reminded me after I already drew it blue, but that's okay. I like blue a lot. I think it would have looked really nice with the lavender purple that I have, but I think it looks good with blue too. But yeah, so that dandelion, I drew it kind of scraggly, which I'm okay with. I think it kind of gives it a personality, a personal touch. And then the dandelion's shadow, I had a lot of fun with it. Later on, my sister's walking by and I asked her, like, just to look, like, when you first look at this drawing, what's something that stands out at you right away that's wrong with it? And she said that the dandelion's shadow was too dark, contrasted too much with the rest of the picture. And I don't know, it's, for me, being the one who drew it, it's hard for me to see that. Like, to me, I think it looks really cool, but I don't know. I think it's like the way light works. Like, when you're making shadow puppets, you'll notice, like, when you have your hand different lengths away from the light source, your shadow will get real fuzzy and then it'll get real crisp. I think because the dandelion's really close to the fingers, the shadow is really crisp and dark. And then these blue flowers I'm working on right now, well, they're purple in the picture, but they don't really cast a shadow on the hand at all in the reference picture, so I didn't draw a shadow of those in my picture. But a friend of mine who's also an artist that I met in North Dakota he told me, because like I started drawing portraits when I was in North Dakota, and I did a bunch of them, and they're really good. They could of course be better, but it was my first time really drawing portraits. Like I'd drawn faces before and stuff, but never like the way I'm drawing these hands right now, that's the way I did those portraits, and they're really good. But one of them, the girl was wearing glasses, and I had a really hard time with the glasses, and like I drew a portrait of Christina Aguilera, and the reference picture was black and white, and she had shadows on the side of her lips and on the side of her eyelashes, and it was the reference picture was black and white, and it was very high contrast, so those shadows kind of melded into what they were of. So like her eyelashes looked like they were really long because of the shadow they were casting, and then one side of her lips looked bigger than the other because of the shadow they were casting, and I drew it that way because that's how it looked in the reference picture. And that friend of mine told me that a lot of times when you're drawing a portrait, especially if you're drawing it for somebody, if there's something in the reference picture that won't translate well to a drawing, you feel free to change it, or draw it differently so that it looks right. So I've tried to keep that in mind, because when I said I've always drawn throughout my entire life, and I always strived for realism, that also means that my reference pictures, I always tried to draw exactly what was in them. And I mean, that's totally true. Sometimes drawing exactly what's in your reference picture isn't a good thing because it doesn't translate well to pencil on paper, unless you're one of those people who, like, I've seen those videos on YouTube of those people that can draw off of a photo, and their drawing looks just like the photo, and that's amazing. And I would like to be able to do that, but like I said, I'm at the point now where that's not really my goal. I just want to find my own style, and I love drawing, and like this picture of these hands that I'm drawing right now, like, I'm really happy with it. It feels good. It's very satisfying to finish a picture like this and be happy with it. I look at it now and I see flaws, things that could be better, things I could have done differently, but it's all part of the learning process. And I still have the rest of my life to keep on drawing, and I'm excited about how much better I can get and what other pieces I'm going to create in the future. So you shouldn't get too hung up on any one piece, and that's been a difficult thing for me. I think something that has helped me open up my mind when it comes to art and being okay with the flaws and things is, like I said, I've drawn my whole life, and I had this little blue portfolio. Well, it was a big blue portfolio, and it was just stuffed full of everything I'd drawn throughout, like, my grade school years, my middle school years, early high school, my teen years. And there was a period of my life where I traveled quite a bit for a few years, and I left that portfolio at my parents' house most of the time to keep it safe. And one of the times, it was when I was in North Dakota, and I started drawing the portraits. I came back home and went to go get my portfolio from the spot that I usually kept it in whenever I left it at my parents' house, and it's just gone. I lost all of my art. To this day, I still haven't found it, but what can you do? That was really upsetting, but now I've got a blank page, so to speak. I can start over. I do have a new portfolio, and well, I have two actually. I have a normal sized one and a large one for these larger pieces of paper like this. This is like a 11 by 14 or something like that. I'm really happy with it. Recently I've been branching out into new styles. Like, this is my main style, this is what I've done my whole life, but I went and bought some Copic markers and some Artist's Loft like version of Copic markers, and some black, like, different, like a brush tip, chisel tip, a .05 and a .005 fine tip, and started drawing like cartoon anime type drawings, which I've never really done before, and I always thought I was really bad at it because, like, I struggle with straight lines a lot, which is another reason why I like this kind of stuff. Like, there aren't really many straight lines when you're drawing organic things like hands and faces, but I really enjoy, like, the straight lines, you draw it out and then you go over it with your fine liner, and then you can fill it in with, like, I really like just black and white pictures, but I also like coloring them in, and I'm practicing right now trying to blend and shade with markers, and it's really hard for me. I'm not good at blending with markers. I can't figure it out. I need to keep on learning that, but that's what I'm gonna do. And that's what this channel is hopefully gonna be. You guys can take this ride with me as I draw different pictures and learn different styles, and always feel free to leave any tips or suggestions in the comments, and I'd love to hear from you guys. And I just want to learn and get better, and this picture here, like I said, there are things that could be different, there are things that could be better, but I'm really happy with it. It's another step in the learning experience, and thank you guys for coming with me. Well, I will see you all in the next video. Bye.